Waitress chased a millionaire to return his wallet. Then he offered a marriage contract. She couldn't refuse. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to tonight's story, to our main character. The soft rain of downtown Chicago painted the city in silver. Inside Marble and Pine, an upscale restaurant where crystal chandeliers shimmered like stars, Elena Brooks balanced 3 plates on her arm. Her sneakers squeaked on the marble floor. She had been working double shifts for weeks, saving every tip to cover her mother's hospital bills. Her uniform smelled faintly of coffee and sanitizer, and her wrists ached from carrying trays heavier than her own dream. At table 12 sat a man in a dark gray suit. He was quiet, his movements deliberate, his presence calm yet commanding. He paid for his meal, left a generous tip, and walked out with the same silent confidence that made heads turn. Only when Elena went to clear the table did she notice it, a black leather wallet resting on the seat. "Sir, excuse me," she called, glancing toward the glass doors. But he was already gone into the drizzle outside. For a moment, she hesitated. Some people would have pocketed it, the logo alone screamed luxury. But something inside her whispered, "Do the right thing." Without a second thought, she grabbed her thin jacket, pushed open the door, and ran. The night air bit into her skin as she dashed down the block, rain soaking her hair. "Sir, you forgot your wallet," she shouted, her voice cutting through the traffic noise. He turned. Under the streetlight, his face came into focus. Adrian West, the man every financial magazine called Chicago's youngest self-made millionaire. Rain streaked across his jawline, his eyes sharp, unreadable. For a heartbeat, Elena froze, realizing who he was. Then she extended the wallet with trembling hands. "You left this at the restaurant," she said, panting. "I did not look inside." Adrian studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, instead of taking the wallet, he asked quietly, "You chased me through the rain for this?" Elena blinked, confused. It did not seem right to keep it. A small, almost tired smile tugged at his lips. He took the wallet slowly, his fingers brushing hers warm against her cold skin. "If you are this honest with strangers," he murmured, "maybe you can help me with something even crazier." Elena frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked at her, rain dripping from his hair, eyes steady and deliberate. "Marry me," he said. "Not for love, for a contract." And that was the moment Elena Brooks's ordinary life, the waitress from table 12, began to unravel into something she could never have imagined. Elena stared at him, rain dripping from her lashes. For a second, she thought he was joking, but Adrian West's tone did not change. Calm, certain, businesslike. He slipped his wallet into his pocket, then spoke again as if offering a job, not a proposal. "I need a wife, just for a few months, a contract marriage." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "You cannot be serious." "Completely serious," he said. "You will be paid well, enough to fix whatever this honesty of yours is costing you." The wind howled down the street. She could still hear the rain striking the pavement like tiny hammers. Elena's first instinct was to walk away, but then her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. A text from the hospital. "Payment overdue. Treatment may be stopped next week." Her throat tightened. She looked back at him. His gaze was steady, not mocking. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you ran after me instead of keeping the wallet," he said. "And because you are not from my world. That makes you believable." He handed her a card, embossed with silver letters. "Adrian West, CEO, West Holdings Group. Come to this address tomorrow at 10. You will have an answer by then." Elena stood frozen on the sidewalk, card trembling in her hand, as he disappeared into a black town car. The rain kept falling long after the taillights vanished. That night, she sat by her mother's hospital bed, the card still in her pocket. Machines hummed softly. Her mother's breathing was shallow, but peaceful. "Mom," Elena whispered, "what would you do if someone offered to change everything for a price?" Her mother stirred slightly but did not wake. Elena's eyes burned. She thought about her rent, her brother's tuition, the debt letters piling up on the kitchen table. Maybe, just maybe, this was not about selling herself. Maybe it was survival. By dawn, She made up her mind. She stood before the glass doors of West Holdings Tower, her reflection small against the steel and glass. Inside, people in suits rushed by with phones and coffee cups, too busy to notice her nervous hands gripping the contract folder she had been given at reception. When Adrian entered the conference room, the air shifted. He removed his coat, calm as always. "So, Miss Brooks," he said, sliding a pen across the table, "have you decided?" Her pulse raced. She thought of her mother, her brother, her tired, aching hands. Then she nodded slowly. "I will do it." Adrian's expression softened for the first time. "Good. Then let us begin." He clicked the pen open. The moment Elena signed her name, a quiet hum filled her chest, half fear, half hope. She had just signed away her old life and stepped into his. The following morning, Elena arrived at Adrian's private residence on the edge of Lake Michigan. It was more like a mansion than a home, all glass, steel, and silence. The driver who picked her up spoke little. He opened the door and said only, "Welcome to West Estate." Inside, the air smelled of cedar and rain. A tall woman in a black suit introduced herself as Mrs. Carter, the household manager. "Mr. West is in his study," she said crisply. "He asked me to review the contract with you first." They sat in a quiet room lined with books and expensive art. Mrs. Carter handed Elena a folder, the pages thick and heavy. Each section was marked with numbered clauses. Elena read in silence. Clause 1. Maintain public appearances as Mr. West's lawful wife for 6 months. Clause 2. Attend all business and family events when requested. Clause 3. No personal relationships during the contract. Clause 4. Keep all private matters confidential. Clause 5. The agreement can be terminated only by mutual consent. Mrs. Carter glanced up. "Do you have any questions, Miss Brooks?" Elena hesitated. "What happens when the 6 months are over?" "Then you walk away, debt-free, and with a very generous sum." Before she could respond, the study doors opened. Adrian entered, immaculate in a navy suit. He gave Mrs. Carter a nod, then turned to Elena. "I assume you have read everything?" "Yes," she said softly. "I understand." He handed her a pen, the same one she had used to sign the first page the day before. This time, his eyes stayed on her as she signed the final page. "Welcome to the arrangement, Mrs. West," he said quietly. The words echoed through her chest. Mrs. West. It did not feel real. Later that afternoon, a stylist and a personal assistant arrived with racks of designer clothes and jewelry. Elena stood awkwardly as they measured and dressed her, transforming her from a waitress into a socialite. The mirror barely recognized her. Her hair was swept into a soft wave, her simple features highlighted by light makeup. She felt like someone else entirely. "You will attend a charity gala tomorrow night," Adrian said that evening over dinner. "It will be your first public appearance as my wife. Keep it formal and simple. Speak little. Smile when I do." Elena nodded, her stomach tightening. "And what do I tell people if they ask how we met?" He paused for a moment. "Tell them the truth," he said. "You return my wallet. The rest is business." She stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. As he rose from the table, she whispered, "Then what am I to you, Mr. West?" He stopped at the door, not turning back. "For now," he said, "you are exactly what I need." And with that, he left her in the vast, quiet dining room the contract signed, the title given, and a world she no longer recognized waiting beyond the marble walls. The night of the gala arrived faster than Elena expected. The driver opened the door of a sleek black car, and flashes from cameras exploded like lightning across the red carpet. She stepped out carefully, her hands trembling inside white gloves. The air smelled of perfume, rain, and anticipation. Adrian extended his arm with quiet authority. "Remember," he murmured, "walk with confidence. No one here should see fear." Elena nodded, linking her arm with his. Her heart pounded against her ribs as they entered the ballroom. Inside, the ceiling shimmered with chandeliers, and music floated from a live string quartet. Everywhere she looked were faces of power executives, investors, socialites in diamond gowns. It felt like another planet, far from the diner where she once poured coffee for truck drivers and college students. "Mr. West," a woman greeted, her smile sharp as glass. "And this must be your lovely wife." Elena returned a polite smile. "It is an honor to meet you." The woman's eyes flicked over her dress, as if measuring every thread. "Interesting choice," she said coolly, then turned away. Elena swallowed the sting and held her posture, just as Adrian had instructed. He led her toward the table reserved for donors, his voice calm. "You handled that well," he said quietly. "They test everyone new who enters this circle." "Do you enjoy living in a world that keeps testing you?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I learned to survive it." During the dinner, reporters whispered and cameras followed them. When the host invited Adrian to the stage to present a check, he gestured for Elena to join him. Spotlights burned across the floor as they walked together. "Mr. West," a reporter called out, "you never bring dates to public events. Why now?" Adrian's hand tightened gently around Elena's. "Because some partnerships are not for show," he said, his tone smooth but firm. "They are built on trust." Applause followed, polite but curious. Elena felt her knees tremble. She leaned closer and whispered, "Was that part of the act?" "Everything we do tonight is part of it," he said softly, "but it does not mean it is false." Later, as the crowd mingled around the bar, Adrian stepped away to speak with investors. Left alone, Elena wandered toward the balcony for a breath of air. The night sky over Lake Michigan glimmered like black glass. Her reflection stared back at her from the tall windows, elegant, composed, and utterly unfamiliar. When Adrian returned, he draped his jacket over her shoulders. "You did well tonight," he said quietly. "Better than I expected." She looked up at him, the city lights flickering in his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. West," she said, "but I am still not sure who I am supposed to be." For the first time, his smile faded into something almost human. "Neither am I," he admitted. And for a moment, the millionaire and the waitress stood side by side, two strangers bound by a contract, pretending to be in love, yet unknowingly stepping closer to something real. Days turned into weeks, and Elena's life began to shift in quiet, unfamiliar ways. Each morning, she woke in a room that overlooked the lake sunlight spilling across silk sheets, the scent of roses drifting from the balcony. Yet every time she caught her reflection, she still saw the waitress who once counted quarters for bus fare. Adrian kept his distance, speaking mostly through assistants and brief notes left on the kitchen counter. Their marriage existed in photographs, headlines, and staged smiles. But inside the mansion, silence filled the space between them. One afternoon, while arranging flowers in the foyer, Elena overheard two staff members whispering near the staircase. "The board thinks he married her to soften his image after the merger scandal," one said. "They say the deal will collapse if she slips up," the other replied. The words stung like cold rain. So that was it, she was a public mask, nothing more. That evening, Adrian returned from a meeting. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his voice rough. "There will be a board dinner tomorrow," he said. "You will come with me." "Of course," she replied quietly. The dinner was held in a glass-walled restaurant high above the city. Elena smiled through the introductions, careful with every word. But the tension at the table was sharp. A man in his 50s, one of Adrian's senior partners, leaned back in his chair and smirked. "So this is the woman who changed the great Adrian West. Tell me, Mrs. West, did you fall in love before or after you saw his bank account?" The table went silent. Elena felt the heat rush to her cheeks. But before she could respond, Adrian's voice cut through the room. "She fell in love with my mistakes," he said calmly. "And she has already paid for more of them than you ever will." The man laughed awkwardly, and the conversation shifted. But Elena's heart thudded painfully. He had defended her. Not for show, it sounded real. Later, in the car, neither spoke. The city lights flickered past the windows like falling stars. Finally, she whispered, "You did not have to protect me." "I did not do it for the contract," he said simply. "Some things should not be left unanswered." When they reached the mansion, he paused at the doorway. "Elena," he said softly, "you belong here more than you think." She watched him walk away down the hall, his footsteps fading. And for the first time since signing that contract, she felt something shift inside her, a warmth she could not explain, a fragile spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, this was becoming something real. The next few weeks passed in a quiet rhythm that neither of them had expected. The contract still hung between them like a shadow, yet life in the mansion began to soften around the edges. Elena started spending mornings in the garden, tending to the flowers with the housekeeper. Sometimes, Adrian would join her on the terrace with his coffee, watching silently as she worked. One morning, he finally spoke. "You do not have to do that. The gardener comes twice a week." Elena smiled without looking up. "I know, but plants do not thrive only on care. They need presence." He studied her, his expression unreadable. You speak like someone who has lived many lives. Maybe I have, she said softly. That evening, a summer storm rolled over the lake. The power flickered, and the mansion went dark except for the fire in the living room. Adrian found Elena sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, the storm reflecting in her eyes. He sat down beside her, the sound of thunder filling the silence. "Does the storm scare you?" he asked. "No," she replied. "Silence does." For a while they listened to the rain. Then, almost without thinking, Adrian began to speak, his voice low, steady, stripped of the control he usually carried. "When I was 23, I lost everything. My father's company, our home, my name. I built West Holdings from the ruins, but the cost was trust. I stopped believing in anyone." Elena turned toward him, surprised. "Then why trust me?" she asked. He met her chaza. "Because you remind me of who I used to be before I learned to hide behind contracts." The words hung in the air, fragile and true. The firelight danced across his face, softening the sharpness that the world saw in him. For the first time, Elena saw the man behind the title, not the billionaire, but the lonely soul carrying too much weight. Without thinking, she reached out and placed her hand over his. His fingers tensed, then relaxed beneath hers. "Maybe you just need someone to remind you again," she whispered. He looked at her, eyes searching. "And what about you, Elena? What do you need?" She hesitated, her voice barely a breath. "To believe that kindness is not a weakness." Lightning flashed outside, followed by a rumble that shook the windows. Adrian's hand remained under hers, steady and warm. In that moment, the line between contract and connection began to blur. Two strangers who once signed a deal were now sitting in the dark, not as a businessman and a waitress, but as two hearts daring to trust again. The morning after the storm, sunlight poured through the wide windows, washing the mansion in gold. For the first time since she arrived, Elena felt at peace. Adrian was different that day, quieter, lighter, almost human in the way he asked about her mother's health and if she was sleeping well. But peace in Adrian West's world never lasted long. That afternoon, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the marble hall. Mrs. Carter appeared at the doorway of the study, pale and uneasy. "Mr. West," she said, "there is a problem." Adrian looked up from his desk. "What kind of problem?" "A reporter just published an article suggesting your marriage is fake. They claim it was arranged to distract investors from the merger investigation." Elena froze where she stood. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Who leaked it?" "It came from inside the company," Mrs. Carter said quietly, "and it was sent to several news outlets." By evening, the story was everywhere. Headlines flashed across every financial network. Adrian West's contract bride, the scandal behind the smile. Photos from the gala flooded social media, side by side with her old pictures in a waitress uniform. Elena sat alone in her room, scrolling through the comments that cut like knives. Gold digger, fraud, paid actress. Her stomach turned as she read line after line of hate. When the phone rang, she almost did not answer. It was the hospital. The nurse's voice was gentle but firm. "Miss Brooks, your mother's treatment has been delayed. We need the next payment immediately." Tears burned her eyes. Everything she had tried to protect was slipping away. Moments later, there was a knock at the door. Adrian stood there, his face drawn tight. "Pack a bag," he said. "We are leaving for the cabin tonight. Until this settles, I want you away from the press." "And what happens when they find out it is true?" she asked bitterly. "That this marriage started as a lie?" He paused. "Then we face it together." They left the city under cover of darkness, the car headlights slicing through the rain. The cabin stood at the edge of the forest, small but warm, far from the noise of Chicago. Elena sat by the fireplace, her heart heavy. "You should not have to hide because of me," she said quietly. Adrian poured himself a drink but did not touch it. "You are not the reason," he replied. "Someone in my circle wants to destroy me. They used you because they know I would not fight back if it meant hurting you." She looked up sharply. "Why would it hurt you? You said this was just business." His eyes met hers across the dim light. "It was supposed to be, until it was not." Silence followed, thick and electric. The fire crackled. Outside, wind whispered through the trees. Then his phone vibrated on the table. The screen lit with a message. "Call me. We can fix this, Lila." Elena's chest tightened. "Who is Lila?" she asked. Adrian hesitated. "My ex. She was once my partner in both business and life." "The one who leaked the story?" "Most likely," he said. She has been waiting for a reason to bring me down. Elena stood, her voice trembling. Then go fix it with her, Adrian. That is your world, not mine. No, he said firmly, stepping closer. This time I am not running from what I want. But before she could respond, the knock of the past grew louder. Outside, the faint sound of cameras clicked in the distance. Reporters had already found them. And as flashlights swept through the trees, Elena realized that no amount of distance could hide a truth built on a contract, especially when hearts were already involved. By morning, the quiet cabin had turned into a circus. Reporters surrounded the entrance, shouting questions, snapping photos, and demanding statements. Adrian's security team escorted them out, but the damage was already done. The headline had grown louder, spreading faster than wildfire. The Waitress bride contract marriage exposed. Inside, Elena sat by the window, watching the chaos unfold. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles pale. She had not slept. She could not. Every word the world threw at her felt like another cut she could not heal. When Adrian entered, he was holding his phone, his voice low and measured but laced with exhaustion. The board wants me to hold a press conference, he said. They want me to deny everything. To say we met through mutual friends, that the contract never existed. Elena looked up slowly. And what happens to me if you do that? He hesitated. It would clear your name eventually. Her voice cracked. No, it would bury me even deeper. They will think I tricked you. They will think I lied to you and you saved yourself. Adrian set the phone down. His composure faltered for the first time since she had met him. Then what do you want me to do? He asked quietly. She stood, her voice trembling. Tell them the truth, all of it. I can live with the world hating me, but I cannot live pretending I was a lie. He looked at her, torn between pride and guilt. If I tell the truth, the company will lose everything. The investors will walk. Then maybe they should, she said, her eyes bright with tears. Because a company that cannot survive honesty does not deserve to stand. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Adrian took a slow breath and reached for her hand. You once told me that kindness is not a weakness, he said softly. Maybe honesty is not either. The next afternoon, they returned to the city. The press conference was scheduled for noon at the headquarters of West Holdings. The lobby was flooded with reporters and flashing lights. Elena stood behind Adrian, her palms slick with sweat, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the noise around her. When he stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. His voice was steady, every word deliberate. There has been speculation about my marriage to Elena Brooks, he began. And much of it is true. It started as a contract, a business arrangement designed to protect my company. But what began as convenience has become something I did not expect. Truth, integrity, love. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He continued, his gaze finding Elena in the front row. If you need proof of her character, you already have it. She chased a stranger through the rain to return his wallet. She asked for nothing. She gave everything. That is the woman I married. Flashes erupted, and the room buzzed with questions, but Adrian ignored them. He stepped down from the podium and walked toward Elena, the cameras following every move. In front of everyone, he took her hand and said quietly, I am sorry for every moment I made you doubt yourself. If you still want to walk away, I will not stop you. But if you stay, let it be real this time. Elena's throat tightened. Tears blurred her vision, but she did not look away. Then tear up the contract, she whispered. Let us start over without papers, without lies. Adrian reached into his suit pocket, pulled out the folded contract, and tore it cleanly in half. The sound echoed through the hall, louder than the cameras, louder than the questions. And for the first time since that rainy night in Chicago, the story that had begun with a forgotten wallet was finally becoming something no one could buy. Not a deal, not a scandal, but a choice. A real one. The weeks following the press conference felt like stepping into a new life. The storm had passed, though the world still buzzed with curiosity. Some called it a scandal, others called it courage. But to Elena, it felt like peace, the kind that comes when there are no more lies left to tell. Adrian resigned from 2 corporate boards and dissolved the merger that had started the chaos. Stock prices dipped for a while, but within months, his reputation for honesty brought investors back stronger than before. He often said quietly to the press, "It turns out that truth pays better dividends than deceit." Elena kept her distance from the cameras. She spent her days volunteering at a community center in the city, teaching cooking and financial literacy to women trying to rebuild their lives. When reporters tried to follow her, She only smiled and said, "I am just returning the kindness I was once shown." One evening, as autumn colored the trees along the lake, Adrian visited the community kitchen unannounced. He watched from the doorway as Elena handed out food to the families, laughing easily, her sleeves rolled up, her hair pulled back. For a long time, he simply stood there, unnoticed, seeing the woman he had nearly lost. When the last family left, she turned and saw him. "You should have called," she said, wiping her hands. "I wanted to see you as you are," he replied. "Not as Mrs. West, not as the face of any headline." They walked outside where the evening air carried the scent of leaves and rain. The city lights shimmered on the water. Adrian reached into his coat pocket and held out something small, the same black leather wallet she had returned months ago. It was worn now, but inside it was a single photograph of the two of them at the gala, smiling for the first time without pretending. "I kept it as a reminder," he said softly. "You brought this back to me once, and somehow you brought everything else back too." Elena looked at him, her voice gentle. "So what now, Adrian? There is no contract left to hold us together." "Then we will write a new one," he said, his smile faint but sure. "No terms, no signatures, just faith." He pulled from the wallet a small folded note, a check she had once refused to cash. Across it, in blue ink, he had written, "Paid in full by love." Her eyes shimmered. "You always know what to say," she whispered. "Only when it is the truth," he said. They stood by the water, quiet for a moment, the city humming softly behind them. Adrian took her hands, his voice low but clear. "Elena Brooks, will you marry me again? This time, without a contract, without fear, only choice." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but her smile was steady. "Yes," she said. 1,000 times yes. Months later, the ceremony was small, just family, close friends, and Mrs. Carter, who cried quietly in the back row. Elena wore a simple ivory dress. Adrian waited at the altar with that same black wallet tucked inside his jacket pocket, a symbol of how their story had begun. When they exchanged vows, he whispered, "You once ran after me to return what I had lost. I promised to spend my life never letting you run alone again." The guests applauded as they kissed under the afternoon sun, laughter spilling across the garden. And when Elena looked up at him, the man she had once known only as a customer at table 12, she realized something simple yet extraordinary. Sometimes, life does not begin with love at first sight. Sometimes, it begins with a wallet, a storm, and a choice to do what is right, and ends with a love no contract could ever define.